Good afternoon, everyone. China, difficulty growing wheat, right, red bar. Global wheat, way more mouths than there are bushels to feed them. Same with corn, same with coffee, same with rice. Coffee ending stocks globally way down. But don't worry, Folgers, less weight per canister, shrinkflation in your face. So is the labor shortage, reducing output of foods. USDA raising 2022 food inflation highest in 42 years now. So we're going to start measuring true wealth in the amount of loaves of bread we have. Forget the Rolex. This is a map of the world aboard the Hindenburg. Notice some topographical changes. Check this out. Many people today struggle to manage their weight, but this is more true than ever after the age of 20, because after the age of 20, our body's metabolism slows down by as much as 4% every decade. By the time we're 50, we've experienced a 10% drop or more in our metabolism. That's a risk to health. That's why I highly recommend adaptwithketo.com. This product works by increasing the ketone levels inside your body, which in turn support boosted metabolism. A scoop a day, I saw improvements for my energy levels while working on the farm. And the best part is I never had to cut out carbs or make other changes to my diet. And if you want to try some of this amazing keto powder, luckily I've secured a deal for the Adapt 2030 audience. Take 51% off your next order by going to adaptwithketo.com or click on the link in the description box below. And now on with the video. And a moment of zen to appreciate the electrification of our atmosphere, shifting our jet streams and cloud cells. Food's getting more difficult to grow. Nobody appreciates that more than the Chinese. Chinese wheat production projected down from last year. Oh yeah, way down. Right is where you're looking at the red bar. And those numbers are going to diminish even further. So where will the exports come from is one thing. If China's down this far on their production and they've cut wheat early for silage due to diesel inbound shortages, then we're going to have to look at the other top wheat importers, and China's only the fourth largest importer by volume globally. If China has the money and starts swooping everything up, then what happens to Indonesia, Egypt, and Turkey? And if you want to look at the wheat production time series, we still come short every way you look at it. Nowhere to run from this monster in the room. And I would say that because Chinese are going to pay anything to get the crop. Now, if you'd been following Chinese wheat this year, they have come out and cut part of their crop early already to take it to silage. Somebody was paying record prices, and the government did not stop the cutting of the country's food supply 6 weeks early. Now, this was a couple weeks ago, and so many questions were being asked. Why? Well, if there's going to be a disruption in oil, whether it be whatever scenario, fill in the blank, then they would not have the diesel to run their farm equipment. Now, somebody knows there's a massive diesel shortage inbound during the middle of the harvest season, at least in China. So where does that leave us? Well, the timeline puts it at the last weeks of June, first weeks of July. So somebody's pre-planning to, for sure, at least get silage out of it compared to getting no crop at all. That's not reassuring. It's downright scary, and it should scare you too. Not only that that fact is known, but the facts that China being the largest buyer, where are they going to get the wheat from, which is going to pull from all those other nations that I listed there? This is now going to become a hyperinflationary, get it at any price kind of game. That's going to affect you too, because right now we don't have a dual tier system for internal wheat in the United States for us at home, for our own bidding system. We're still out on the futures market on a world basis for pricing for corn, wheat, oats, soy, and coffee, and every other thing as well. So if you look at this and go, well, that's China, that's Indonesia, that's Bangladesh, that's Turkey, That's not going to bother us. Oh, yes, it is. You're going to pay the world price for now until we get the split in the system. That split is shortly arriving, and we'll have a two-tiered price system. But until that happens, we are going into the highest prices ever known for mankind. I really mean that, in human history. These are going to be the prices that are absolutely going to shatter economies and break nations starting right now. So if we take a look at the global wheat, this is outside China, this is global. Look at that, the consumption's exceeding production. It had last year too. Prices started to rise. We sit at all-time record pricing this year, and none of the conundrum from the fertilizer shortages, export embargoes, resource nationalism, and the list to tally up other factors, insect devastation, no herbicides, very limited. There's a lot of factors that are going to drive prices higher. So let's jump over to the world markets and trade. This is off the USDA grains report here, 2022-23. Forecast down. And in the center there, that is the wheat chart we just looked at. But what's above it? Oh, king corn. And below it is rice. So let's dive into those. Global corn production forecast down. Yep, and primary cuts in Ukraine. U.S., Canada, and China going to be smaller, and the EU. Oh, no fertilizer, really? That's a no-brainer. But how about the global rice production? Forecast at a record. This was the forecast before all the fertilizer shortages hit, the resource nationalism, the embargoes, the fuel shortages inbound, high diesel prices, and you name it. That's for East Asia. So let's jump into the corn here. Slightly exceeds production. Remember, fertilizer shortages were not taken into consideration when this was done. They still haven't revised the numbers when they well know that there's going to be massive shortages this year for fertilizer, reducing output by the ton. Same with record rice production. Reel that back. You're too overzealous there, USDA. Fertilizer shortages are also going to hit rice. It's a worldwide phenomenon, fertilizer, and it's going to be worse next year. If you thought bottlenecks and supply chains were nasty this year, ouch for next year. This is just a warm-up. So those of you thinking rice, wow, it's going to be everywhere. This is your meat as we march into hyperinflation for food prices. And you need to ask yourself, how much can you actually switch over to a grains-based diet instead of meat? Then vegetables following the same trajectory, straight up on the rocket ship. I think rocket fuel futures would be a one for food price futures launching into the future. I think they're intertwined here, looping, but the whole thing, the food prices, now we see there's an egg shortage. More egg processing facilities have gone down. Egg exports suspended out of Malaysia, and it's just nonstop of even the basics. An egg is a basic thing. World revolves around eggs. So what happens if your eggs are $12, $14 a dozen? Really play that scenario out, because that's where it's moving to. If your eggs are $12 a dozen, then what happens to your spending? What happens to your purchases? What happens to your choices? And in my opinion, I don't think any of the grains either are going to stay at what we consider now bargain basement prices compared to what it'll be in the future. You might think they're expensive now. Oh no. Oh no. This is bargain basement shopping, what we're seeing in the supermarkets at these prices. By this time next year, you'll remember the good old days when a loaf of bread only cost $6. Or your gallon of milk only costs $10. And your eggs only cost $14. You'll be reminiscing around a campfire because you can't heat your home. It'll be too expensive, so you'll be back to wood. Roasting chestnuts at Christmas because your house is too expensive to heat. This is the world we're heading into. Not a lot of people are really focused on that. It's not going back to normal. Never was meant to. And taking a look at the contract prices for rough rice, average for the 5 prior years of contract prices, on average, $12.74, but the new price, which is going to continue upward, $17.16. So even rice is seeing some significant pulls. Not quite doubling yet, but getting there. But if we look at the coffee assessment here on world markets and trade is again from USDA. The newest I could find was December 21. I couldn't pull anything newer. I looked. Ending stocks back then, which is, a few months back, 5 months back, still ending stocks were incredibly low. And we're running a razor thin edge on that production consumption line. But again, it's going to be affected by the amount of fertilizer. And I know there might be a lag time because the trees would have uptaken the nutrients that they need. But moving forward with new plantings, it's going to start to come down. Now the ending stocks are a key right there. But don't worry, this is so in your face. I could probably smack you with this magazine. Same taste, same number of cups, now less weight per canister. They are flaunting shrinkflation in your face as a good thing. They're telling you they're putting less weight in the can. And you're going to enjoy it. They're reducing by how much? 12%. It even says in the center paragraph in that bold white, this more efficient roasting technology is going to reduce the coffee by 12%. So you're going to pay the same, but you're going to get 12% less. Let's look at the seasonal chart for corn above and the Robusta coffee below. Let's see if they're following the same trends. Remember, brown line is a 5-year average of pricing for corn or for coffee. Top chart, it was $4.29. Now it's $7.78. That's for corn. Coffee is following the same, $15.55 to around $2,000. Now, that didn't double, but that's up significantly. Corn is nearly double. These by the mid-crop tour, July, are going to scream higher. Harvest season, we can hope they come down as they do in a natural cycle, but until then, prices are going to go up. And also, ever turn a bag of chips over to see how much air is truly in it? Do that in your supermarket, and you'll see how much shrinkflation really is in there. Nuts. Let's look at the world pistachio output, lower despite record U.S. production. So that number is going to continue to shrink because pistachios, if you look, are in some nations that are going to be affected by the fuel and the food prices themselves. And how long is it before a major food producer goes down on exports? It probably won't be corn. It would be something like this: cocoa, coffee, pistachios. That will be affected so greatly by hyperinflating prices, where we'll see a Sri Lanka 2.0, then a 3.0, then a 4.0, that will actually affect food exports in itself because the economy has gone to non-acceptable levels and society starts to unravel. We're going to start to see this across the poorest of 50 countries in our world first, long before it gets to the U.S. But then what are those countries and what are they exporting? Because you're going to watch the dominoes fall again and again, and it's going to follow the same exact pattern. The fuel price is going to get too high in a nation. The food price is going to get too high in a nation. Then we got the perfect catalyst. We're coming into summer in the Northern Hemisphere. It's hot. People are agitated. They're going to be hungry. And you're just going to watch this repeat again and again and again. So I'm trying to put together a list of the countries I think are going to go first, and then which products they export, and then what that will drive further in pricing. Now, pistachios, it's a candidate to at least see the theory on how this might work. Cocoa, that's the next one I'm calling that. Going to see some unrest in a few places that produce cocoa. Now, some of these equatorial nations, like Indonesia, for example, had suspended all exports of their palm oil. But then something happened and they were guaranteed wheat to come in replacement for that. So Indonesia, I don't know if it's really going to happen there, maybe on some isolated islands. But see, their economy is so big and they're already a major food exporter of other things. I mean, how many of you cook with palm oil here in America or in Europe? I mean, the majority of us would use something else. But for the remainder of the world, it's huge. An enormous amount of people cook with palm oil. So, see, larger food producers have the ability to trade off some of that economic loss and still bring some money in and keep people fed. But then you need to start to narrow your search into which countries are not large enough to feed their own people or export major foods, stuffs, except for coffee, raw cocoa, stuff like this. And then you'll start to get a good gauge. What countries do you think have no food exports, cannot grow very much food, and are totally reliant on imports? Then that comes into a different class and category itself. Doesn't matter if it's a wealthy nation like Singapore, wink wink. They could have all the money in the world they want to a point, and you're already starting to see supplies get tight and people complaining online about food pricing in Singapore. So it's not going to take too long to really stretch the imagination looking through the history of that place, that once it goes off, a military power will step in to, let's say, keep that Malacca Strait area open and functional. But we can watch repeats in history again and again. And this is what you're looking for doing your own research to try to forecast this out a little bit better into how you're going to be affected directly, and then what other commodities might go up in price and which ones might not even be delivered due to unrest. Like really, how much is Sri Lanka exporting in coconut oil right now? I don't think very much. But then here at home, what we do have right now is the United States Department of Agriculture, our favorite four-letter agency, USDA, raising the 2022 food inflation forecast yet again. Like that 35-year high wasn't good. The 37-year high wasn't good enough. Remember, it's America. You got to be number one. 42 years. I bet we're going to go higher than that, but that's just my own feeling. And then at what point does it disconnect with history where you can't really do a one-to-one any further, or records only began at a certain time for food inflation and then we're way above that and eclipsing it? Example here, $8 gasoline, May 29th, California. In your gas tank, $8. That crushes business. That crushes deliveries. That makes everything really expensive. And then if we want to add the cherry on top of misery for ag this year, survey, this is out of the UK farming team, half of growers reduced output due to labor shortages. That's interesting because that seems to be a global phenomenon, which makes me believe that remeasuring wealth is going to be something just like this. How many of those Rolexes will you have to trade for the food that the family has on the right when your family's starving? I am curious what the rate will be. Really, there's going to be a Rolex bread ratio that'll pop out of nowhere when things get real bad and people get real hungry. Create the Rolex to bread ratio. Start plugging in some numbers and we'll follow that as a data point as well. And I have had a couple comments through several videos asking me, shock us with something that is so outlandish, so far out there that we never ever would have thought to think of it. You know, we see a lot of this new energy thing you're talking about. You got that Tataria thing, and you got the ag, and you're always yapping on about, you know, crop losses and price increases and things. Okay, that's old school. Surprise us. Okay, here we go. Challenge accepted. Hindenburg, map on the wall. Notice any differences in the topography? Obviously, the Amazon is pretty well sussed out. It's a little over-exaggerated, and the river's going through Central Africa. Now, this could have been a map of a map prior, because the Piri Reis series was also based on different source maps. And I like this book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which also references all these different source maps that were used. So I'm just curious, the Hindenburg obviously put something up here very different, very unusual, especially the water bodies to the west of the United States. So what are we seeing here is the question. What time period was this map really about? Please leave your comments in the description box below. Remember, in these times of uncertainty, food is going to be very valuable, and if you don't have to go out into the chaos and you're able to ride out events that might take place over a week or 2 weeks until it's safer to venture outside, you want to think about storable foods. My Patriot Supply and Adapt 2030, 3-month emergency food supply while they last. And that should be for everything while they last, because things are selling out fast. Once the populace understands that they need that one item, whoosh, it's all gone. It's like that for everything. Wait until we come into 2023, the spring planting season, and almost everybody's woken up and frightened because of what happened at the end of this year, and everybody's running out to buy garden implements because they'll know at that point they need to grow their own food. They're absolutely going to know it to the core of their being. Half the world's population. Do you think there's that much stuff laying around all your cities that you could outfit every single family that wants to grow food with tools, shovels, rakes, hoes, seeds, drip irrigation, hoses, etc., and the list will roll on from there? Do you think it'll be there? That's just a distant early warning for what's going on. Now, having food preps is just a no-brainer at this point. If you can't see it coming, you're never going to. So hopefully you can have conversations with your family. I've left all the links in the description box below. So all you have to do is click on that and it'll take you to the original story where I found the information. Like all these PDFs that I grabbed the info from, some of that stuff's like 60 pages long from the USDA. I just pulled out the little nuggets that I thought were noteworthy to talk about, to connect some dots and ideas, weave a few ideas together here in the video. But that's there for your own reference, so you can do, you can back check yourself and then follow that information. If it helps you, help others get ready for it, especially family members. If you can show some hard data from like government agencies and truly what the state of agriculture looks like on our planet, where we're heading from here. Well, these all-time record prices, food inavailability, countries collapsing from food and fuel prices, and then just take it out into the spring season of 2023. Everybody's going to want to grow their food, so you're going to have to kind of pre-prepare at this moment when there's a glut of goods, because looking at no ports have really opened in China, so whatever has been inbound, it's there, it's being unloaded, that's it. That's all we get. There's nothing else coming from China at this point. So as this backlog of inventory works its way through the supply chain here, and it seems like there's a glut and things are stacked to the ceiling in your local store, that's pretty much because that's all they can pack in there and that's all they get. And once that dwindles out, then there's really nothing to replace it. And we will truly see what's important for society at the end of this year and moving into the spring planting season. But I do thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of the video, and I'll see you next time.